I remember the feeling of disappointment when my mother, Sarah, would find tiny, unwelcome guests in our flour or cornmeal sacks. That sick feeling when you open a jar, hoping for good, clean food, and find it crawling with little creatures. It meant not just wasted food, but wasted money spent on replacements, and a good deal of extra work cleaning up and starting all over again. Nobody wants to throw out good provisions, but there's a simple, humble leaf that can help us avoid all that frustration and loss. See this? This cornmeal, stored since last year's harvest, is perfectly preserved. It smells as good and fresh as the day Esther and I put it away, with not a speck of trouble inside. Not a single unwelcome guest has settled in. That's because of this little bay leaf, right here. Many folks think of bay leaves just for cooking, for adding a warm, subtle flavor to a pot of stew, but they are also a powerful natural deterrent for those tiny pantry pests that so often ruin our stored dry goods. It's a reliable, time-tested method my mother used, and it still works wonderfully today, without needing any harsh chemicals. I'm going to show you exactly how this unassuming leaf, alongside a few simple, steady habits, ensures no tiny critters ever settle in your grains or flour. This will make sure your bulk purchases and staples truly last through the lean times. You'll learn how to use this quiet, time-honored trick using dried bay leaves in truly airtight containers to keep your pantry provisions safe and avoid throwing out good food. Now, this isn't a cure for an active, established infestation. We'll talk about how to deal with those later. But it's the best prevention I know to keep your shelves clear. We'll also cover how often you should replace these leaves and the most important mistake folks make that can undo all your careful efforts. I recall being about 6 or 7 years old, maybe around 1950. Mother Sarah often kept our bulk flour and cornmeal in large cloth sacks or wooden barrels in the cool, dry corner of our summer kitchen. There weren't many glass jars back then, certainly not for everything. I remember watching her, sometimes after she'd just ground some fresh corn, carefully tucking a few dried bay leaves into the flour right inside the sack. The air would already smell of rich corn or wheat, and then a sharper, spicier scent like warm earth and herbs would join in from the bay leaves. She'd always say that these leaves kept the little nibblers away because good food was too precious to waste. It was just part of her steady rhythm of keeping house. What Mother understood from generations of practice, and what scientific studies have since confirmed, is that these common bay leaves from the Laurus nobilis plant are recognized for their ability to keep insects away. They're not magic, mind you, but they contain natural compounds that many common pantry pests simply can't stand. Researchers have identified that the strong, distinct smell comes from essential oils within the leaves, primarily a compound called 1,8-cineol, also known as eucalyptol. This aroma, while pleasant to us in cooking, acts like a strong stay-away signal for things like weevils and Indian meal moths. So, while Mother Sarah might not have known the chemical names, she certainly knew the reliable result. Now, how does this actually work? It's quite simple, really. The bay leaf doesn't kill pests, it repels them. Think of it like a polite but firm warning. When you place bay leaves in your dry goods, the essential oils in the leaves slowly release their scent. This strong aroma interferes with the pest's ability to find food and lay their eggs, making the environment unappealing to them. Weevils, moths, and other grain beetles rely on their keen sense of smell to locate their food sources. When that scent is overwhelmed by the bay leaf's strong odor, they just move on, looking for a more hospitable pantry elsewhere. This is why it works best as a preventative measure, stopping pests before they ever get a foothold, rather than trying to clear out an existing family of critters. This method is a particularly good fit for folks who buy dry goods in bulk, or for anyone who wants to store their staples for many months. It's especially useful for flour, rice, pasta, dried beans, cornmeal, cereal, dried fruits, nuts, and even spices. If you have a clean, dry pantry, a root cellar, or even just a cupboard where you keep your staples, this method can offer excellent protection. However, it's not the best solution if you already have an infestation. If you're seeing webs, larvae, or active adult insects, you'll need to address that problem first. We'll talk about cleaning out an infested pantry in a later part. Bay leaves also won't help much if your containers aren't truly airtight. Pests can easily slip through loose lids or tears in packaging, regardless of any bay leaves inside. For materials, you'll need two main things: dried bay leaves, the same ones you use for cooking, and good, truly airtight storage containers. Glass jars with rubber-sealed lids, heavy-duty plastic containers with strong clasps, or even Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers can work. The quality of your containers is just as important as the bay leaves themselves. Let's walk through the steps to get this working in your own home. It's a habit more than a chore, and like most good habits, the rewards come steady and sure. First, start clean. This is the most crucial step, perhaps even more important than the leaves themselves. If you have any existing dry goods in your pantry, give them a thorough inspection. Look closely for tiny holes in packaging, small beetles crawling, any signs of larvae, or fine silken webbing, especially in the corners of bags and boxes. If you find any definite signs of pests, it's best to discard that item outright. It's not worth the risk of spreading the problem. For non-infested items, especially grains and flour, consider freezing them for 48 to 72 hours, if you have the space. This is a good way to kill any hidden insect eggs that might have come home from the store with your new purchase. After that, thoroughly clean your pantry shelves. Take everything out. Wipe down all surfaces with a mild soap and water solution. Let them dry completely, and then run a clean, dry cloth over them to ensure no crumbs or dust remain. This habit of a clean pantry before new stores come in is something Esther still does weekly. Next, prepare your goods and containers. Make sure all your dry goods are completely dry. If you've just harvested and dehydrated some herbs or fruit, for example, let them air out fully to avoid any remaining moisture. Moisture is a friend to mold and certain pests, and we want none of that. Choose your airtight containers. Glass jars are excellent because you can see inside at a glance, and their seals are usually very reliable. Heavy-duty plastic containers with good gasket seals and strong locking lids also work well. Ensure they are sparkling clean and bone-dry inside before you put any food inside them. Now for the bay leaves themselves. You want dried bay leaves, the very same kind you might buy for your stew pot or soup. I generally use whole leaves, as they release their essential oils slowly over time. For best results, I often take a few leaves and just slightly crush or bend them between my fingers right before placing them. You'll notice a burst of that familiar, slightly spicy scent. This gentle crushing helps to release those repelling essential oils a bit faster, giving the container an immediate charge of protection. You don't need to crumble them into tiny pieces. A gentle squeeze or bend is enough. When it comes to placement, the goal is to distribute the scent throughout your stored goods. For smaller containers, like a quart-sized jar of lentils, 1 or 2 bay leaves placed directly in the container with the food are usually sufficient. For larger containers, such as a half-gallon or gallon jar of flour, rice, or dried beans, I'll use 3 to 5 leaves, tucking them in at different levels within the contents. If you're storing something like dried pasta, you can scatter them among the noodles. For flour or cornmeal, you can bury them slightly within the grain itself. The leaves are perfectly safe to come into direct contact with your food. They won't alter the taste unless left for an exceptionally long time, and you'll simply remove them when you portion out the food for cooking. Finally, seal tightly and store correctly. Once your bay leaves are in place, make absolutely sure the lid of your container is sealed as tightly as possible. A good, strong, reliable seal is just as important as the bay leaf itself. Remember, the leaves repel, but an open or loose container invites trouble and defeats the purpose. Store these sealed containers in a cool, dark, and dry place. High humidity and warmth can diminish the effectiveness of the bay leaves by causing their essential oils to evaporate too quickly. These conditions can also shorten the shelf life of your dry goods, inviting other problems besides pests. It's important to have clear expectations for this method, dear friend. As I mentioned earlier, bay leaves are a repellent, not a killer. This means if you already have an infestation, if you're seeing active pests, eggs, or webbing, placing bay leaves among the contaminated goods will likely just encourage the pests to move to another spot, or they might simply be too established to leave. In such a case, your first step must be to remove all affected food and clean the area thoroughly, just as we talked about. After that, you can use the bay leaf method as prevention for new clean goods. Discard any heavily infested food safely, usually by sealing it in a sturdy bag and placing it in an outdoor trash bin immediately to prevent further spread in your home. Consider the lifespan of the leaves themselves. The essential oils in the dried bay leaves, the ones that give off that strong scent, do dissipate over time. In a well-sealed container, I find they remain effective for about 4 to 6 months. After that, their scent may be too faint to be a strong deterrent, and the pests might decide to move back in. Make a habit of checking your leaves when you're getting low on a stored item. If they no longer have that distinct, slightly spicy scent when you gently crush them between your fingers, it's time to replace them with fresh ones. For longer-term stores, where you might not open a jar for many months, I sometimes mark the date of replacement on a small piece of tape on the bottom of the jar. Also, be mindful of environmental conditions. Bay leaves work best in cool, dry storage. High heat can cause the essential oils to evaporate more quickly, reducing their repellent power much faster than 6 months. High humidity can also be problematic as it encourages mold growth on both the food and the leaves, which can then attract other kinds of pests that enjoy damp conditions. Always aim for a consistent, cool, and dry environment for all your dry goods, not just for the bay leaves to work well, but for the food to stay good too. One common misconception I've seen is that bay leaves alone will solve all your pest problems if you just put them in the pantry. They won't. They are a valuable tool in a larger toolkit. The most important mistake folks make is relying solely on the leaves without ensuring truly airtight containers and maintaining good pantry hygiene. No amount of bay leaves can keep pests out if they can easily crawl in through an open bag or a loose lid. The seal is your first line of defense. The bay leaf is your secondary deterrent. Finally, remember that bay leaves are generally safe for human consumption and food contact. They are a common ingredient in many recipes. However, for those with known allergies to plants in the laurel family, it's wise to exercise caution. If you're ever in doubt about the safety of stored food due to pest contamination, perhaps a jar had a loose lid you didn't notice, it's always better to err on the side of caution and discard it. Your health and peace of mind are worth more than a few scoops of flour. Now, how can you test this for yourself? The proof of this method isn't in a sudden disappearance of pests, because we're aiming to prevent them in the first place, but in the consistent absence of them. A good, straightforward test is to take a staple grain you've had trouble with before, maybe some cornmeal or flour, and divide it into two identical, truly airtight jars. Place a few bay leaves in one, but not the other. Store them side by side in your pantry for 3 to 4 months. Then open them up and inspect carefully. Run your fingers through the grain. Look for any movement, fine webbing, or dusty traces of insects. My bet is you'll find the bay leaf jar clean and smelling sweet, just like this cornmeal here. The real meaning in these simple habits, passed down through generations, isn't just about saving a few dollars or avoiding frustration. It's about being a good steward of what we're given, about care and foresight. It's about honoring the effort that went into growing and harvesting that food and ensuring it can truly nourish our families when we need it most. Sarah taught me that every bit of preservation, every thoughtful habit contributes to the peace of mind that comes from knowing your household is well provisioned. If you've tried this method or have another natural way you keep your pantry pest-free, please share it in the comments below. Tell us what you store, what leaves or other natural items you use, and what results you've seen. Your experiences can help someone else on their journey of self-reliance. Next time, we'll be talking about a simple trick for keeping your garden tools from rusting over the winter. Stay frugal, stay free.